I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar 10 Ways to Maximize Your Giving at Year End. My name is Jonathan Harrison. I'm a wealth advisor here at Sound Stewardship. And this month we dive into practical strategies about how to make your generosity have greater impact this season. So, the fantastic guest to guide our conversation is Matt Farmer. Matt is president of the National Christian Foundation's Heartland team, brings a wealth of experience in catalyzing generosity, helping people give with purpose and joy. He's a friend of mine, an interesting background with both an MBA and an MDiv, and served with the Air Force, unique connection to sports, a couple years with the Jets, and now the chapel leader for the Kansas City Royals. So Matt, welcome.
Thanks.
Glad to have you with us.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, appreciate it. We forgot to mention that we also have been neighbors. So,
Yes, that's true.
yeah,
I forgot to mention neighbors and probably the most important part of your bio, the crew, right?
yeah, the crew. Here we go, the home team. Yeah. So, wife of 17 years, Jenna, to use a football reference, outpunted my coverage, as they say. And then we have three boys and a fur baby not pictured, but Brennan, Jensen, and Blaine. And we love to tell folks that things in our world are in one of two phases. They're either broken or they're about to be broken. So you got a couple of boys, boys are God made boys to break stuff, and that's what they do. Things and sometimes each other. So there you go.
My three are teenagers right now, so that resonates it hits close to home, too close.
There we go. Love it.
Yeah. Well, and as we approach year end, everyone's shifting into holiday mode. It's hard to believe Thanksgiving is a
Oh
week
yeah.
away. But people are also thinking more about donations. And I know for nonprofits and foundations that help people with their giving like yours, what is year end like for you guys?
Good question. It is a proverbial sprint to the finish line. You've heard the phrase deadlines spur action. So most of us do things based on deadlines that we have in front of us. And every year, it's remarkable. Every year we have the same deadline. And so it's a flurry of activity between now and the end of the year. And we're not unlike most nonprofits where the gifts that come in, the majority of the gifts come in the last 45 to 60 days. And we've been using this phrase here in our office that we are drowning in generosity goodness by God's grace because of the generosity of his people. So I love seeing God's people leveraging his resources for his purposes. So
But what was that percentage you said that comes in the last 60 days?
Uh, it depends year to year, but it's usually about it could be 40, 50%. Yeah,
And in terms of dollar amounts, National Christian Foundation facilitates a lot of giving. What does that you think that'll look like in 2025? Any idea?
we do a lot of giving and granting, and we use those two phrases. It can be a little confusing, but giving is the giving into the funds, and the granting is the granting out. And high level, I think we're approaching $30 billion in since 43 years, 1982. And then I think we're like 20, I don't know, 23, 24 billion back out the door or something like that. This year, it'll be probably, we'll give away more than $2 billion for sure. And I imagine we'll bring in somewhere between two and three. But it would be it would be remarkable for us to hit the $3 billion mark in again. But the big number, or the one that we watch the most, is what goes out the door, which is usually about 70 to 80% of what comes in from the year before. So
Yeah.
high pass through rate.
Yeah, yeah. The money is not sitting fallow; it's getting sent out.
No, yeah,
But
yeah, it's
that's a
going.
crazy big number. Yeah, $2 to $3 billion going out
Yeah,
in a it's a lot of impact.
it's remarkable. Yeah, and it'll be. I think here in our office, it'll be a record year of granting for sure, and maybe giving in as well. So we'll see. But we've already broken that record, so excited about that.
Yeah. Well, so the thought I had for today is, we have these 10 ways to maximize your giving because, like a lot of people do, like you said, because of the deadline, they might start thinking about it towards the very end of that deadline. It's not always the most optimized way. So we have a
No,
combination of very practical, some more tax oriented, some more philosophically or family oriented. So maybe with that stage set, you want to dive in with the 10 ways to maximize your giving at year end.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do it.
right.
And excited for ways you're going to contribute to this conversation too. So the ping pong effect.
Yeah.
But here we go.
What is the number one way to maximize your giving at year end?
Oh man, the number one way. Well, point number one would be, or I think it's important to think about, do you actually have a giving strategy? Have you thought about what it should look like? And I think you're a financial advisor. We like to use this language of, most folks have a financial strategy and haven't thought a lot about a giving strategy. So thinking through what does that giving strategy look like alongside the financial strategy? And, I think what we would say is if you have one, generally you're going to probably spend a little bit less on taxes. You're going to redirect some of that to the charities that you love to support, but also we would say you get to experience the joy of generosity. I mean, Jesus himself said it's more blessed to give than receive, which could literally be translated more happy making to give than receive. And then I think we would say too that giving, it's also a gateway into intimacy with God. So it also grows our relationship with King Jesus. And so the strategy, I think both, it helps at both a, kind of a theological, spiritual level, grows us in intimacy with God, but then at a very practical level, we redirect resources or help get more resources to the causes we care about, the charities we love to support. And as we think about what the strategy looks like, we would say at the baseline, it's based on scripture. So it's a biblical foundation, this idea that God owns it all. We talked about that this morning at a Kingdom Advisors group, that he's the owner and we are the stewards. So we're just stewarding the resources that he has entrusted to us. And then as you think about that foundation, we would say we think there's at least a few pillars that would grow out of that foundation. One is kind of the legacy pillar of how do we craft an enduring story? What's the family pillar? How do we do unity? How do we do giving that creates a unity among the family? And then what are the wealth and resources? What are the things that God's entrusted to us would be the third pillar. And then finally, based on our experiences, how God's wired us, the things that we feel called to, how can we help clarify where God wants you to give and where he wants you to direct the resources that he's entrusted to you? So I think at the highest level, one question we would ask is, do you even have a strategy, or is it just like, hey, let's just throw it at organizations because it's the end of the year and we want to get our deductions? So like we want to step back from that. And at its best, our giving happens because it's motivated by the one who has been abundantly generous to us. So start with a strategy of some kind.
Yeah, as I've worked with a lot of families, two of the most common strategies or
Yeah,
non-strategies
yeah,
I've seen are one, oh, I got a letter from somebody, so I'll send them a gift.
yeah,
Whether it's something I really care about that much or not,
yeah,
um, I'll give if they, ask me to give.
yeah,
And
right,
then two is very responsive, which is not bad, but not necessarily intentional. And then the
right.
second one is particularly for people with what would you say, variable income or business income or lumpy income, where it's
Yeah,
not just the same paycheck as at year end, them realizing, oh, snap, I want to be more intentional in the amount I want to give away. And so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
literally, searching nonprofit websites on December 31st, trying to like push money out the door. And that's
yeah,
not
yeah,
necessarily intentional either. So yeah, I like this approach because it's more about stepping back and saying, well, what is the purpose of my generosity? And where does it fit into my broader faith in life?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Love that. Yeah, we see the same thing. We take calls on the 31st, folks trying to make gifts into their funds, and sometimes it's too late depending on the medium with which they're hoping to make the gift. But yeah, I think at its best, how can we scale back or step back and take a broader look at what's God asking us to do with the resources He's given us? So,
I don't know if this would be helpful, but I could share my family's giving strategy. We do have a
ooh,
strategy in place.
yeah,
It's real
I
short.
like it.
We have four buckets that we kind of put
Okay,
giving money into.
yeah,
A big percentage goes to our church. For us, it's a specific part of our salary that just
mm-hmm,
automatically goes to our church.
yep,
But then we have a sliver that we give to, we consider like community. So places that are just naturally around like our neighborhood. nonprofits in our area. We have
Sure.
a community
Yeah.
garden, things like that. It's not the largest dollar amounts, but because of the proximity, we want to support them.
Yeah.
And then the third, a pretty big category is passions
Hmm.
and things that we're really fired up about. And and this is kind of your causes point over here. And for us specifically, I know for a lot of people, when they read the news, depending on what's going on, they get fired up about like something they're frustrated with or something that they
Yeah.
see that they wish would be different in the world. And our first response was we're trying to even talk with our kids about this is like, if you seeing something that you think should be different, like find an organization and
Yeah.
just act on that, give.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And then we do reserve a specific part of our giving that we don't set aside for anything that we want to be spontaneous with, where if
Yep.
God brings somebody into our path that's like, oh, we could really help them. And
Yep.
sometimes we don't put we haven't clarified what a giving fund is yet, but sometimes we don't put that in our giving fund so that
Yep.
it might it might be a cash gift for somebody or a Walmart gift card or something
Yeah,
that
for
needs it
sure.
in a different format. But
I love that.
so we
Well,
have four pillars.
nice. Well, I would say jump in, resonate with all those. And then one of the things that we've done is sort of taken Jesus's words to his disciples as he's leaving, this idea of taking the good news to the ends of the earth, starting in Jerusalem, but also Judea, Samaria, and then the ends of the earth. That's one way that we think about what are the kinds of organizations that we want to support and how do we do it. Similar to you, it's like, hey, well, what's here in Kansas City? What's proximate to what our everyday lives, kind of a regional or national approach to what's happening around the country, and then a global approach of, hey, both spreading the gospel, in terms of the Great Commission, but also the Great Commandment, who's doing some great work, loving neighbors, promoting human flourishing, those kinds of things. So there you go. A couple
Yeah.
examples.
And how have you seen, like, how does a family create a giving strategy? So I think the concept is good, but like, what do you do if you're like, oh, probably need to think through that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it would be, so first of all, couples sit down. I mean, we could provide some resources that could be helpful, but I think praying about it, searching scripture for it. But there's so much online. You could even just do a quick help. You could ask AI to help you develop even a baseline strategy to grow from. So don't start at zero. Have somebody kind of have something help you develop a bit of a framework. But I think certainly if you believe God owns it all, then he ought to be foundational to it, both in the sense of praying about it and searching scripture to see how that should inform it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a great start. What would you say is the number two way to
Number
maximize?
two, we've got a charitable bunching. So we've got one strategy that folks are increasingly implemented is this idea of bunching their giving. So when the standard deduction was dramatically increased, was it 2017? Folks, I think I think the stat was they saw about 90% of folks just
Yeah,
started using the standard deduction. And so one way to think about it is if folks are able to increase their giving such that they can combine 2 years of charitable giving. Sometimes we've seen folks do 3 years of charitable giving in 1 year. So you bunch all your giving into 2 or 3 years, exceed that standard deduction in the year that you do that. You get reduce your income, increase your charitable deduction, and then the next year or the next 2 years, take the standard deduction and maximize kind of the deductions you get for the following 2 years. So it just helps it can help leverage ways that you can maximize deductions to give more away and free up cash to do other things, whatever those might be. Take a mission
yeah,
trip, reinvest it in something else.
yeah. I have a ton of clients that do this because the idea is if the standard deduction, because like you said, it's so high now, is roughly 30,000 ish. If when you stack up your deductions, your donations, your mortgage
Yep.
interest, the state and local tax you pay, if it's just below or just over 30,000, like you might be doing a lot of great giving, but you might not be getting, which most of my clients, they're not giving for tax reasons,
Right.
but they want to get the best tax benefit they can from what they're doing. And so
Yes.
if you're barely hitting that mark, like you said, pre-give a year or even 2 years ahead, if you
Yep.
can push that deduction in that year way up, the next year you just get the normal, 30,000-ish you were going to get
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. which is 31,500, I think, for married couples this year. So for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And then one of the ways that we do that, or one of the ways that people do it, it can be a helpful way to do it, is through a donor advised fund. And we didn't actually talk about what that is, but that is the primary tool NCF uses to help people with their charitable giving. So we think of it and describe it as like a charitable checking account or a charitable savings account, because how it works is you make the cash gift into the fund, or it could be a non-cash gift, which we'll talk more about, and then you get an immediate uh, receipt for that. You can take a deduction on those gifts that you make into your donor advised fund. And then when you're ready, immediately or over time, you make grants out to the charities that you love to support, the causes that you want to see movement in. And so, thinking about this bunching idea, it can be helpful to use the donor advised fund because you're giving more than you would otherwise into the fund, and then it's there for you've got some time to think about, pray about, hey, we may give to the same organizations the same amounts this year, but the amounts that we've given above and beyond, we want to think through more of that, pray about what does that look like. Is it just 2x whatever it was the year before, or do we shift some things around based on the fact that we've got a little bit more to give away, or twice as much to give away, or whatever the strategy is. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that having that donor advised fund, almost like a charitable checking account, is pretty helpful for this bunching strategy
yeah,
because it's not like you're giving your church, or usually most people aren't giving their church, 2 years worth of gifts all at once.
yes,
By depositing in the donor advised fund, you get the deduction right then, but then you can give it away to charity. Oh, the charity still gets it just the same.
yeah,
They can still get it just the same rhythm that
yeah.
you had been giving before, but from a tax standpoint, you kind of collect all the deductions into one year.
Yes, exactly. And we use even kind of a three-word. I didn't mention this, but while it's in the donor advised fund, it can grow tax-free because all those dollars are immediately invested. So that's maybe some ways why we would say charitable savings account over checking account. Most checking accounts don't have any kind of interest-bearing activity, but you put it in there. So you give it in, it can grow, and then you grant. So give, grow, grant. Sort of one way to think about it.
Yeah, that's great.
And it brings some efficiency. So that would be the next point would be, how do what are some of the other benefits beyond, you can bunch your giving into this particular tool. It doesn't have to be through the tool, but one of the ways the tool can be helpful is it can create some simplicity. It can centralize. I love this picture that our friend Kayla got for us. It's this idea that, hey, we don't have to go looking for all the contribution receipts that we got from, the 5 charities, 10 charities or more that we support. So we can centralize our giving through that one donor advised fund, and we get one receipt from them at the end of the year. Or if you do some cash giving, or you do some other kinds of giving that you're maybe not looking for proof that you need to get a deduction for, then you can still do that, but you at least have your simplified, centralized receipt, consolidated receipt at the end of the year. Print that off, give it to your CPA, and just save some time. If time is our most valuable resource, it does save some time tracking all that stuff down.
Yeah, I do this because I just love at the end of the year, or at tax time rather, to be able to just go get one report. Now I do have like one or two charities that I still need to get over into my donor advised fund. It's, been set
Oh
up
yeah,
automated, and I don't even remember how to switch
this is
it.
your
But
reminder.
yeah. So, but for the most part, almost everything, I just go to my donor advised fund, say, all right, I want the receipt, hand that one th report to my CPA, and then, but I don't have to go collect, because it doesn't matter. Once you put the donation into the donor advised fund, whether it's, monthly or a big one at the end of the year, like bunching, when you send it out, it, from a tax standpoint, doesn't matter if that goes all out to one charity or 100 charities. It's still just the receipt that you use to put the gift into the donor advised fund.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
I think the other added benefit, I would say, we've got a really robust, we call it a strategic fund review, which is it's basically a record of all the giving that you have done
Hmm.
through the donor advised fund. So the other benefit, I think, beyond just that one receipt per year, it also helps you track your overall giving and granting activity. And so, we've got
Yeah.
companies that do their giving through a donor advised fund, and they love to use it that way because they've got a record and they can show the folks, their employees, all the folks that are contributing to this helps show, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's what our overall giving and granting has looked like. And then families, they've got an advisor. Advisors often appreciate, alongside the other discussions they're having, they've got a printout of like, hey, here's what they've given into it. Here's all the organizations they've granted to and the amounts, and then here's how it's performed from an investment strategy. Does that need to be adjusted or changed? So there's just a lot of ways you can review that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah.
All right. Number
One
four.
other benefit, you can give anonymously. So, uh, you know, with NCF, I know probably others, it's as simple as checking a box after you log into your fund. Check the box that you want to give anonymously and not with any of the identifying information. So I think of, one of the reasons folks do this is I think we all get plenty of mail these days, that maybe less mail than ever. We get it in our inboxes, email, but still getting lots of mail. And sometimes we get asked by our neighbors if we want to give to this thing or that thing. And we might want to give to it, but we don't want to get added to the mailing list. So you can grant out of the donor advised fund anonymously. And then too, some people from a strategy standpoint or even theologically have a strong conviction that they want their granting to be done anonymously. Think about the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing, and so we've had a couple of families even that have named their fund the anonymous fund, so it's not even identifiable as a
Yeah.
fund name. And I think you balance that tension with, we're also invited to let our light shine before men, so that they see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. But this idea of anonymous giving can be super helpful because you can turn it on and turn it off as you want. And sometimes folks definitely want to make some gifts that are anonymous. So it can be helpful.
Yeah, and it's not all or nothing. I think we do some
Totally.
of both, depending on
Yep.
what we're feeling. Yeah. But the ability to do it, one of the things that's surprising to a lot of clients when they're debating, should I set up a private foundation for my family
Hmm.
or for my business? And they find out that, a private foundation, ironically, is very public,
Yeah. Nothing
the
private
the
about
amount
it.
of assets in it, where you give, all
Yes.
that is laid out for the public to see. Anybody you pay and how much you pay them, if you have paid positions.
Yep.
Whereas in a donor advised fund, all that can be truly anonymous behind the scenes, which is great.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And to be fair to private foundations, you can pair a donor advised fund with a private foundation to get some of that flexibility. But yeah, generally speaking, if all you have is the private foundation, it's definitely not private.
Yeah. Okay, so
So
just to
yeah.
recap the four so far, there's develop a giving strategy, so you're being intentional. For some people, charitable bunching increases the tax benefit by getting those all into one year. We forgot to mention on that, by the way, the July One Big Beautiful Bill Act
Ah, yes.
actually, for our clients, has increased the benefit of bunching for a lot of people because it did increase how much you can deduct from your state and local tax for a lot of people.
Yep.
So that means those who might have been further below the standard deduction line actually, because now they can deduct more of that tax, are up closer and it might be more beneficial. There's also
Yep.
some tax changes coming because of that bill next year that
Yeah.
reduce a little bit of the value of
Yes.
deductions next year. So for a lot of clients, getting the deduction this year may be more beneficial.
Yep.
But
Same. We've
okay,
seen that
so
too.
strategy, bunching, um, simplify to one receipt, give anonymously. What's number five?
Number five, asset-based giving, strategic giving, thinking about, we use this phrase, friends don't let friends give cash. It's not, cash can be a great gift, but there are some reasons why you'd want to do some asset-based giving. And the picture that we used was of a digital billboard because we helped someone here in our region this year gift a digital billboard. And so I think I might have asked this question, but best guess on the value of a digital billboard in the Heartland region. I think a mid-tier city, not even one of the largest cities in our region, but you know somewhere in the we'll say it was in Missouri or Kansas. But what do you think a digital billboard sells for? Just a single digital billboard.
I've already heard the story, so I know the answer already.
Okay,
But
well there you go. Yeah, a little over
but
two
I
million
would
dollars.
I would say, what's that?
a little over $2 million.
Yeah, I would say
So
my answer was maybe in the hundreds of thousands. It was not in the millions, but
yeah,
$2
yeah,
million. And so, okay, so somebody has an asset like this. They did not pay $2 million for the land and the billboard.
they did not. No,
And
they paid
so
very little.
if they so
Yep,
yeah, they paid something, but they didn't pay 2 million. So if they sold it and then gave out of the proceeds, they say I feel like I should, give a portion of
yep,
this, then they would pay capital gains
they
tax on all
would.
of that. And then if
Yep,
there's any portion that they give, they'll get some offsetting deduction, but it's after they've already paid the capital gains tax.
that's right. Yep,
What's the
exactly.
benefit if they give it as an asset?
So the benefit of giving it ahead of time is that they get the fair market value deduction of their gift. So he gets the full value of the gift. In this case, we'll say 500,000. He owned about 20% of it, and then he also he doesn't pay any capital gains tax. So they get the full fair market value deduction, and then avoid any capital gains tax. So we kind of use this phrase of converting tax dollars to giving dollars. It just helps them leverage more resourcing for charities, churches, causes they love to support. And I think from an IRS perspective, the reason this is strategic is, as the Federal Reserve and the IRS tell us where people's net worth lie. And so, we've got this graph or these pie charts that show, 90% of a person's, any family's net worth. And it doesn't even really matter what your socioeconomic status is. 90% of your net worth is in non-cash assets, and 10% is in cash assets or liquid accounts. And then if you look at what people give away, the assets that are given away, 75% of that comes out of that 10% slice, and 25% comes from the 90%. And so we love to ask folks, like, what else are you doing out of that 10% slice besides the charitable giving? And of course, the answer is quite literally everything, right? You're buying groceries, you're paying mortgages, in my case, you're paying for youth sports, which, caveat, I'm not sure if youth sports is about the youth or the money that I pay for it, but either way. So we've been trying to help folks think about, how do we give from the balance sheet? How do we give out of our wealth and not out of our cash? And so trying to unlock that 90%, and it could just be a really strategic way to give, and lots of things you can do, publicly traded securities, digital billboards, rental properties, vacation properties, real estate portfolios, intellectual property, crypto, all those kinds of things would fall in that 90% category. So
Yeah. Yeah, I only have a couple clients who are involved in investing in billboards. Most of them
yeah,
don't
fair.
have that. But public traded stocks, mutual funds, when the stock market's up like it is this year, especially if you pair this with that bunching idea.
Yes.
For some clients, it might be they have a huge year where they have higher income than normal, like a sale
Yep.
or a giant commission or um, severance. Sometimes when somebody's
Yep.
paid a severance, if it hits all at once, especially if it's at year end, like they might be being, in a high tax bracket because they're, two
Yes.
years of income in one kind of thing.
Yep.
That's where if you have this any type of asset that's appreciated, it might be a good candidate for donating instead of giving cash. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
For sure. Good stuff. Okay.
Before we go on to number six, we're halfway through, so I want to just make sure people know they can submit a question if they have any questions, or if there's anything that we're talking about that is resonates, and they say, "Yeah, I talked about my giving strategy. I'd love to hear other people's giving strategies." So feel free to either in the chat or through the Q&A submit a question or a comment. So,
There we go.
all right, what's next?
We'll keep it moving. QCDs, I believe, is the next one. So qualified charitable distributions, some other call it an IRA rollover. And so basically hit 70 and a half, you're over 70 and a half, you can make a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA. I think this year the max amount is $108,000. So you make that contribution directly to a charity or a single charity fund, which we could talk about, but directly to a charity of some kind. And then it's not counted as income, and it's also not, can't take it as a charitable deduction, but you get to give that directly to a charity or you can divide it up into a couple different charities, but give that out. And then once you're over 73, you've got to require a minimum distribution. So either way, you want to be thinking about, what are some ways I can leverage those dollars for charity, or most people are thinking about ways. I mean, increasingly, we're coming across folks who have very high balances in their IRAs, and they're thinking about not giving those to their children and thinking more about how do I get dollars out of this for charities now, or what would it look like to make charity the beneficiary of that when I pass. So,
Yeah.
a couple different
Well,
ways to think about it.
particularly if, if an IRA goes to an heir, they have to take those assets out and be taxed on them, and it's a shorter time frame for most than it would be if you're taking out over those
Yep.
required minimum distributions. So by sending it to charity and maybe using other assets to get to the kids or beneficiaries, this is a great way to minimize that tax burden on the next generation. Better yet, year by year. So yeah, I have
Yep.
clients who tons of clients who do this. Again, it's after 70 and a half, and it qualify any of these qualified charitable distributions count towards your RMD, but never show up on your tax return. So you don't get the deduction, but it's better
Yep.
because it doesn't increase your income. So like some clients, for instance, if they took their RMD and even if they turned around and donated it, it would push them up a Medicare premium bracket where their
Yeah.
healthcare premiums would
True.
go up. And
Yep.
so by intentionally pushing that off of their tax return and just going straight to charity, they don't have to pay higher premiums in Medicare. The charities gets the same amount,
Yep.
but it's and for a lot of people because of that standard deduction discussion, they may not have been itemizing anyway. And
Yeah.
so it's great.
That's right. And
Now you
two
did,
nuances there.
but yeah,
Well, so one thing I know Matt would probably appreciate this, Severson, me mentioning it, is the you can use some of your QCD for a charitable gift annuity. I think the max is $54,000, but you can use that for what's called a charitable gift annuity, which is basically an opportunity to receive some income for you or your spouse over your lifetime, and then the remainder would go to the charity. It's, there's some complexity there, and there's some percentages and things that are driven by your age and those kinds of things, but it is a possibility. And then the other nuance would be you can, at least at NCF, we've set up what's called a single charity fund. And so you could give the QCD to a single charity fund, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a fund that can only go to a single charity. And that's why it is allowed for a QCD, because we'll say you make $100,000, you direct that QCD to that single charity fund for $100,000. And, um, and then you have to give it directly to, let's say, your local church. And a couple of reasons they would do that is, one, they want some anonymous giving. They want to do it anonymously. Or two, maybe they think they're not sure what the church would do with all $100,000 of that in one year. So they're going to spread that out over multiple years to give it away. So,
yeah, I've worked with sports professionals, who
mm,
maybe you've seen this too, where if they're getting all their income in a relatively short or a large part of their lifetime income in a relatively short period, tithing on that, especially if they go to a smaller church directly
yes.
all at 1 year would be hard. But
Yep.
it's not exactly the QCD issue, but it's similar to that the retirees have. Whereas if they did want to do that large amount of giving, it would still might be too much for the church or charity in 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. The QCDs can't go to that normal giving fund we talked about, the donor
Yeah.
advised fund. They
That's right.
have to go out direct to charity unless you set up one of these specific single charity funds.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So,
Yep.
all right, good. I think the next one's another tactical, practical one like that.
Here we go. State tax credits. Is that where we're going next?
That's it.
Yeah, so we have seen folks leverage, I mean, certainly leverage their income cash gifts directly for these state tax credits. And in some rare cases, we don't see as much of the um, taking advantage of tax credits through donor advised funds, though we know it's possible. There's a process definitely you got to follow. Probably not worth digging into all the detail on that, but my contact information will be available at the end, or obviously they can get in touch with you, but we could work through that. Possible, but a little bit nuanced. So, but certainly worth looking into.
Yeah, the state tax credits, particularly for residents in Missouri and Kansas, so the states around where we are, they are actually better than a deduction because a deduction is different than a
Yes.
credit. A deduction reduces your income, where a credit directly reduces your taxes. And both Kansas and Missouri and other states, but Kansas and Missouri have different tax credits that are really high percentage. So some in both states are credits for up to 70% of your
Hmm.
gift. So, as an example, if you give $1,000 to a particular entity that fits one of these tax credits, $1,000 gift saves you $700 in state taxes. And then you do get deducted the other
Yes.
$300. You don't get to deduct the full amount, but you get to deduct the
Yep.
$300 on your federal giving. And so for somebody who's in a really high tax bracket, like the total amount of like dollar benefit almost equals
It's huge.
100%. It's
Yeah.
really crazy when you it's like 800 to $900 on that thousand gift
Yes.
might be the actual like benefit back to you. And so I have a few clients who literally pay no state tax because they send all of their giving or a big part of their giving to these tax credits
Yep.
so that in their case they're like, well, I don't really trust what my state government would do with with it, but I like
Yeah.
these organizations. And
Yes.
so there are a couple. There's in Missouri it's called Mo Scholars. It's
Yep.
for private education. And
Yes.
I think you can even designate the school that it's 100% state tax credit. So if you donate $1,000, it's up to $10,000. If you donate
Mm.
that $10,000, that literally cuts 10,000 off your
Yes.
Missouri tax return. So that's another great way to maximize your giving that people may be even giving to organizations. I helped a client who this is their exact thing. They said, well, I really don't, I'm not happy with my state government right now. I don't like what they're doing. And I'm not happy about my state taxes. And so we said, well, what are you giving to right now? And they were already giving to an organization that had a 60% state tax credit.
Mm.
They just weren't
Yeah.
taking advantage of it. So they're
Yep.
like, oh, this is great. I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah, and I think there's some in Kansas that are 75%, maybe not. I thought there were some that were that high, but either way, most of these are, I mean, from a biblical standpoint, if you're thinking about a strategy, a biblical strategy, or just even common good strategy, I almost all these organizations that are getting are available or eligible for tax credits, it's like they're organizations you'd probably want to support anyways,
Yeah.
to your point, maybe are already supporting. So yeah,
Yeah, the tax credits, they're all over the board as far as what kinds they are. Some are just for companies, some are for
yeah,
people. So, and like I said, it depends which state you're in. So that would be good to work, work with somebody to help you figure
yeah,
out. It can get
what the
tricky if,
options are.
yeah, it can get tricky if you pay taxes like a lot of people do in the area in two states, because if you get the state tax credit in one state, you might lose the offsetting,
Yeah.
credit for taxes paid to the other state. So that can get complicated, but they're a great way to maximize your giving.
Love it. All right. So as we think about we're in the grow phase. We talked about kind of the giving into the fund, growing the investments in the fund and granting it out. Uh, in, Within the donor advised fund, though, there's other ways to do it. Thinking about investing charitable capital. So what does it look like to invest that? And at NCF or other donor advised funds, run of the mill, you put the money in, it gets invested into a pool strategy typically that has varying degrees of risk depending on your risk tolerance, from any kind of a money market account, cash reserve pool, to a balanced income, to a growth pool. So you can spread that out between the pools and those kinds of things. And
Hmm.
then there's for lots of DAF providers at a certain amount, a financial advisor can pull those off the platform and start managing those. Some call it a separately managed account, some call it an advisor managed account. But either way, it's an opportunity for an advisor like you all at Sound Stewardship or others to invest it in more flexible ways outside of a pool structure. And then I think you're on the board for Impact Foundation, so shout out to them. We love Amy and her team, do some excellent work. And if you want to get really creative, you can do some direct investing, private investing with some donor advised fund dollars into private companies, social enterprises, all kinds of ways that you can leverage your charitable capital for potential growth. You can also lose it, but double, triple bottom line, quadruple
Yeah.
bottom line activity can be a great way to think about investing it.
Yeah, because the thought there is, of course, you hope your giving dollars have a big impact. But if you're not ready to give it all away all at once, and there are reasons you mentioned their
Yep.
pass through is pretty high at NCF, but there are a lot of good reasons that you don't give it away all entirely all at once. And if there's money waiting there, can the way it's invested actually also make a difference? And that's where impact investing comes along and says, well, maybe there's ways to take an appropriate amount of risk. I think about this with some charities where, they get a donation, but that donation is not, it's not going to help necessarily their operations the next year. But some cases, if they get a loan to a charity that helps them do something, get capital, maybe start their own enterprise, a lot of charities have like a thrift store or something like that, and they might need a loan that helps them even think about what they're doing differently. That can be
Yeah.
really appropriate. And I see
Yeah.
people do low interest loans or stuff like that to help in a way that they want to support, but think might be better than just, writing a check and
Yeah.
being done with it.
Good
It can
clarification.
help us think more disciplined, I think, if there is an element of repayment.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other thing about it is it helps people remember that while we tend to think about our private capital and our charitable capital in two separate buckets, practically they're real. I mean, there is kind of a separate bucket reality to it, but at the end of the day, it's all God's resources. It's all God's, and it's a part of what He's entrusted to us. And so, how do we steward it? How do we steward it all exceptionally well or as well as possible? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this also gets to the kind of the legacy and the long-term strategy standpoint because I
Hmm.
worked with somebody once who their goal, I was helping them build an investment strategy and the contribution strategy to build up their donor advised fund to be $1 million when they retired. That was what they were shooting for.
Okay.
And then they wanted to give away the income over their
Wow.
retirement and then leave their kids as part of their legacy $1 million to give away.
Okay.
That was something that
Yeah.
they had on their heart. And so the way you do that is, partly obviously a lot of contributions, but then investing it in a way that's going to
Yeah.
help grow that strategy over time.
Yeah. Right.
And what's great is because it's in a donor advised fund, National Christian Foundation doesn't have to pay tax
Yeah. That's right.
on that growth, so that's great.
Gross tax free.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Love it.
All
Uh,
right, we just have a couple
so
left.
a couple left. Here we go. Getting others involved. So thinking beyond yourself, and that could be from a giving strategy or investment strategy, like you talked about. We won't dig into that too much, but the idea is that maybe thinking through. We use this language at NCF around family. The idea of family giving is how do we think about we giving versus me giving? And so a lot of families we work with would say, "Hey, we're passionate about particular things, but as our kids get older, we want to do some giving alongside our kids. And a lot of times a donor advised fund can be a great tool to help consolidate resources, to have conversations about how to deploy those well, where to send it. And so there's this conversation of, all right, here's some of the things that we care about. Hey kids, what are some of the things that you're passionate about? You might even give an assignment, right? Some families will say, hey, we're getting together at Thanksgiving. Here's your assignment. Go research some organizations. What do you feel like God's sort of giving you a burden for? Come back, tell us about the organization, tell us how much you're going to give, and we'll match it, or just come back and tell us which organization you want to support, and we'll start by supporting it for you. But that's this idea of like, hey, let's honor the ways that you're wired individually, but maybe there's some ways that we can find commonality, even as a family, to do some giving together that we can all get excited about. So, one practical way, and then another is we talk a lot about giving circles at NCF, and it's not particular to end of year giving per se, but it is an opportunity to say, hey, are there places near me, or are there groups near me, or could I be a person, a catalyst to start a giving circle, which is really just a group of folks that consolidate some of their charitable capital to think about what they want to give to, and maybe giving together provides a catalytic effect towards a particular program or project. So a couple ways to think
Yeah.
about it.
One of the things I would say here too is when you're getting others involved, that it might take some time.
Hmm.
Sometimes I see parents that are really excited about this and are, want to see their kids passionate about giving, and then they get it started and, they give the Thanksgiving assignment and nobody's done
Yeah, yeah.
anything. And they're like, oh, this was
Yes.
a failure. And it does take time necessarily for the kids to, or the others to catch a vision for it. Sometimes it just takes time for them to process it. But another thing I love about it is it lets others' personality shine through.
Hmm. Yep.
An example is when my kids were young, a few years ago when they were younger, and the war in Ukraine. started, they were reading the news. It was
Yep.
a hot topic that we were all, concerned about as a family. And so we said, hey, everybody, we're going to let all of you give $1,000 away from our donor advised fund to something that would help a place in Ukraine. And one of my kids did an organization that helped entrepreneurs who were greatly disrupted, and business owners who were greatly disrupted, and another helped kids in Ukraine. And my middle kid was like, "I want to send guns. Like, how do I get missiles?" Like, well, we're not. Let's leave that to the geopolitical
Yeah.
sphere and not. But what are some, so they helped refugees who were fleeing
Okay.
that part of the
Yes.
country. But you see their personalities differently when you're tackling an issue together, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think it's a reminder that God has made us all differently and uniquely. It's an invitation even for parents, I think, or grandparents to, if they're trying to do it multi-generationally, you get to learn new things about your kids in some cases. So
Which might mean letting go,
yes.
because sometimes the most generous thing to do is let someone else be generous, and sometimes
Yeah.
they're not going to give where you would, and that
Yep.
is not always easy.
That's right. And I
So,
did mention the matching thing because one of the things we see is it isn't always super helpful if parents are just putting money in a fund and expecting their kids to do something with it without ongoing conversation or them having some skin in the game. Sometimes it's helpful to say, "Hey, you give a little bit and we'll match it, or up to this amount, or whatever." Can be a helpful way to get for them to engage in the process and not just passively come along for the ride. So,
yeah.
yep.
All right. For everybody
All right.
keeping score at home, this is number 10.
Number
What is the
10,
top 10th reason to, or a way to maximize your giving?
yeah, use your estate plan as a way to maximize your giving. So thinking a couple different ways at a theoretical, theological level. I think one of the things we talk about is asking um, or thinking about how do we pass down wisdom instead of not just wealth, but wisdom and wealth, and how do we pass down values and valuables? And I know you guys use that language too, but
Mhm.
it's not just about the resources or redefining the resources. Wisdom is a resource, values are a resource to a degree, but then also three really pretty standard questions of what's enough for us, what do our kids really need, and then what do we do with the rest? And sometimes people frame it as like, hey, is there a finish line that we're moving towards, that we're headed towards, that we're going to set for a goal? Or maybe the question is what's too much instead of what's enough, maybe what's too much. There's a lot of ways to think about that. And then at a practical level, I think just thinking through at a strategic level, what assets are helpful to pass down to our kids, what assets are helpful to direct to charity or to the donor advised fund. And as people are thinking about their estate plans, increasingly they're utilizing a donor advised fund as the recipient of anything that is going to go to charity, because it does give them the flexibility of, hey, we've designated these assets for the donor advised fund. And then once they're liquidated or there's cash in there, we can send this out to these different organizations. And then if they want to change those, or if an organization drifts over time, it's like, well, we can go into our fund and change that however we want. But if we do it on our estate plan, then we got to pay an attorney to change it and separate percentages and do all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a, hey, what are some key questions to think about? And then how does it just work practically? So,
Yeah. Well, and that using the donor advised fund in the estate plan, or as as beneficiary of an account, or in the will, so that's such an easier way to do it than putting a direct charity in your will or trust.
yes,
And yeah, and I would say for a lot of my most thoughtful clients, when they see the dollar amount, when we're doing our estate plan, review, and just putting on paper, like, okay, if you died today, if you die in 10 years, here's what we think your kids will receive. For a lot of them, they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable with my kids getting that much.
yes,
And maybe add, not removing the kids from the plan, but maybe adding more to charity. And or it might just be a tithe, it might be a smaller percentage. But either way, I'm surprised at how many people have never thought about doing their giving
yes,
as a part of their estate plan, and yet it might be the largest gift that they ever make.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they can also set it up. You mentioned this, alluded to it earlier, where it can either flow directly out to and through the fund immediately, or you can set it up in a way that You send some of it out immediately, and you set some of it up so so your children give it away over time. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do it. A lot of ways to be flexible and creative around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there we go.
Well,
10 ways.
that's the 10 ways. If there are other ways that you have in mind, we're going to send out an email that includes a recording of today's video plus a recap of the 10 and some other links that might be useful, we think will be helpful. And if there's other things that you think would be maximizing your giving or strategies you've seen, please email us back and let us know. But thank you for joining us for 10 ways to maximize your giving. Next month, December 18th, our webinar is about navigating conversations with family over the holidays.
Mm,
So as you're getting
love it.
together for Christmas, it'll be right before Christmas, sometimes some tricky conversations come up. And when we're dealing with finances, we do deal with a lot of tricky conversations. So we'll have, I think, a therapist on to talk about how do you have those conversations with confidence
Ooh, love it.
and grace. And so we'll see how that goes. But December 18th, mark your calendars. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great
Yeah,
fourth
you know how
quarter.
to reach me if anybody's interested. So
Yeah.
thanks for the partnership. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we'll have your contact information in that email that goes out as well. So,
Good stuff.
all
Thanks,
right. Thanks,
Jonathan.
everyone.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Have a good
See
day.
ya.
Bye.